Hello everyone. Today, as a part of our CAS project, we are here with the second part of our Second World War video. And as we have left, map of Europe in the year of 1939 September looks like this. To recap a bit, Poland has been divided, the war had been declared, but things are so far looking in this way. So, in September 1939, after Germans declared war on Poland, Allies declared war on Germany. And after Germans were done with Poland, the war entered the phase known as the Phony War, which was a phase in which nothing much happened on the Western Front. Because Germans thought that they could sign a peace because the thing was done in a way. They considered this way, so why should we invade France? And the other part also had some politicians that thought of the same thing, like the thing is done, why should we fight? Some people wanted to consider policy of appeasement, but it was not going to, because the main person, the figurehead of the policy of appeasement, Neville Chamberlain, had resigned after the war, and then Winston Churchill became the Prime Minister of England, who was a prominent figure in keeping the struggle against Germany throughout the Second World War. So, seeing that there won't be a peace, in year 1940, April to May, Germans invaded Denmark and Norway. Why? Because these countries were essential for German war effort, as they were providing things like steel, and the Brits started blockading the North Seas. In order to establish direct connection between Germany and these countries were invaded and puppet regimes were installed in both of these countries. However, unlike other countries from Denmark and Norway, Germany did not really annex any land. The invasion was limited to military presence and change of government. And in 10th of May 1940, Blitzkrieg happened. What is Blitzkrieg? It means the thunder warfare or thunder war. And it's the military strategy of mobility, sending tanks and then sending the troops from behind, crushing the enemy and finishing it fast before the trenches are digged and the war starts to turn into a war which was like in the one in First World War. So what happened? German forces passed through Ardennes here, and in a few months they made it to Paris, and the France capitulated. An important thing that happened during this invasion is Dunkirk evacuation. Dunkirk is a city here, and this is the point where famous Dunkirk evacuation happened. Here, as you can see, this is the point of France that's closest to Great Britain. And when the British troops were encircled here, Churchill asked people to come and get their sons, and he said, with their own boats. And in this effort, most of the people were evacuated back to the Great Britain, which allowed UK to stay in the war. And after the Blitzkrieg, the map obviously changed, and it looked something like this. Luxembourg was annexed by Germany because they considered them to be Germans, so there was no need to separate Germans. In Belgium, a puppet regime was established with more land, given like this. Germany annexed a region known as Alsace-Lorraine that they had lost in the Second World War. So, the new borders, something like this. And Northern Germany, not Northern Germany, but Northern France was invaded to guard the Atlantic. So, the new borders of France was something like this. And also Italy gained some land as well, as they declared war once things were looking good for Germans. So this is the new Western Europe after Blitzkrieg, and also the period known as the Darkest Hour, defined by Churchill. So here in the north, direct German invasion. Here, a French puppet regime. Here, it was another puppet regime, and same in Netherlands. So as you can see, entire Europe was dominated by Germans at this point. And what happened afterwards? As we had mentioned before, the USSR and Germans had signed a pact known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. So, in 1941, the borders of Europe were to change again. So, according with the treaty, Soviets annexed Baltic states for protection reasons, as they stated, to protect themselves against the possible Western invasions and to expand their sphere of influence. So these were the new borders on the east. However, some border changes also happened in Romania as well. The region of Transylvania has always been a point of conflict for Hungarians and Romanians throughout the history, especially after the First World War. The entire region was given to Romania, which angered Hungarians. So, to solve this issue among their allies, Germans organized a conference in Vienna, and the new borders were like this. The northern Transylvania went to Hungary, Romania got to keep the south. This region was, by the way, dominated by Hungarians up to this time. So, and in the same year, the invasion of Yugoslavia happened. As they decided to change their government, which used to be a pro-German one and then a pro-Allied one became, which angered Hitler, and the Yugoslavia was splitted like many other countries until this point. But as you can see, there is this effort to stabilize the eastern flanks of the German alliance, or the Pact of Steel, or the Axis forces. And this will serve a purpose in the same year. So, Yugoslavia was annexed according with these borders. A Croatian state, famous for its crimes, was established in this region, consisting of today Bosnia and Croatia. There was some German presence in this region, and a puppet Serbian state was established in the remnants of the area. So these are the new borders before Operation Barbarossa. So what happened on Operation Barbarossa? In early June, and specifically June 22nd, 1941, German troops, together with their allies, crossed the border and they started invading USSR. They used Blitzkrieg here as well, and as the Soviets were unprepared, they came to the outskirts of Moscow, and they were able to siege Leningrad, or with its current name St. Petersburg, in a span of months. And this was the point when Germans had achieved their greatest extent in the war. We changed the map once again. In order to rule these lands better, Germans decided to collaborate with local populations that were under Soviet invasion. Such would be Ukrainians, Belarusians, Baltic people, and any minority that Russia had at that period. They promised them states, not necessarily telling the truth. And they also gave them some autonomy to some extent through their invasion of Soviet Union. And what was the silver lining to this treaty? These people had to organize SS troops and help Germans in their war effort against Soviet Union. So once again, the borders changed. Germans annexed Moorland on the east, which could be shown as this. And then the Finns, the structures known as Reichskommissariats, were established. One was established for Ukrainians, roughly with these borders, and then one known as Easternlands or Ostland in German, and then beyond these borders, Germans had expanded like this, Moscow being here. So this was the greatest extent of the Germans in the Second World War. And from here on, things started going bad for them. So, in 1942, the Battle of Stalingrad began. And Germans here failed to capture the city, and then they were later encircled, which started their withdrawing from the Soviet territories. Slowly and slowly they were withdrawing. And what were the Allies doing? Well, in the year 1943, Allied troops landed on Italy. They captured Sicily and they were continuously coming up to northern Italy. And the famous D-Day happened in 1944. Here on Normandy, Allied troops landed here and they started liberating France. Meanwhile, in June 1944, Rome was captured. So in a span of 3 years, Germans were losing all this territory due to multiple reasons that could be cited as logistical reasons on the Eastern Front, because so thanks to the Soviets' scorcher tactics, it was impossible to deliver logistics in this region. There were no train tracks, even the gasoline in the vehicles kept freezing, so it was a logistics nightmare, which allowed Soviets to acquire the advantageous higher ground and use it against the Germans. And then, in August 25, 1944, Paris here was liberated, to which the Free French leader Charles de Gaulle returned and had a nice parade there, celebrating the victory. In December 16, 1944, Battle of Bulge happened. And meanwhile, the thing known as the Race for Berlin began between two main parts of the Allied forces, between the Soviets, USA, UK and France, which can be cited as the first struggle in between these two forces as a part of the Cold War. And in March 1945, Allies crossed the Rhine. It is a big river here in these regions, and it's a river that was quite hard to cross, as it's like a river which can easily host ships. And finally, in 13th of April 1945, Soviets reached Berlin, and in a few days Germany surrendered and the war was over in Europe. This was the deadliest conflict that has ever happened in the history of Europe, and this conflict saw over 60 million deaths, including millions of civilians, innocent people, Jews, Slavs, Romanians, and many more people that could have been alive today. We hope you enjoyed our video. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.